Thank you, Nanette, for the introduction. Hi, I'm Kwon, and I'll be speaking on behalf of my co-authors, Karen King, Greg Nalasi, and Len Reed. And Karen King will be joining in the discussion at the end. And my co-authors and I are very excited for the opportunity to talk to you about our study, Impact of Media Context on Advertising Memory, a meta-analysis of advertising effectiveness. Our key question was whether media context, in other words, media environment in which an ad is placed, matters. Is it possible that media have a deeper role than simply generating ad exposure or impressions? There have been a number of studies looking at media context effects over the last several decades. Despite industry and research recognition, there remains a lack of clarity regarding media context effects, and mixed results are abundant in the literature on how media context influences advertising effectiveness. So, to clarify uncertainty and provide a more accurate empirical profile of the phenomena, we pose three main questions in our study. First, what are the specific media contexts examined and tested in previous studies? And what kind of influence do these specific media contexts exert on advertiser memory? Second, how does the relationship vary by advertising memory measures? We looked at two levels, one by memory type, recall and recognition, and second, memory content, ad message, brand name, and product category. And third, how does the relationship vary by study characteristics, such as research method used, research participant type, advertising media type, brand type, ad type, and advertised product categories, among others? We use the systematic review and a meta-analysis method to address our questions. Using the databases such as AppsGhost, ProQuest, JSTOR, and conference proceedings from the Print and Digital Research Forum, formerly known as Worldwide Readership Research Symposium, we retrieved quantitative studies from 1960 up to 2013, and reference lists of the articles were manually reviewed to find more relevant articles. The first article appeared in 1965. A total 70 studies from 66 articles were retrieved and analyzed. Coded variables included media context operationalizations, ad memory in terms of recall versus recognition and type of content, ad content, brand name, product category, and the effect size metric selected for our study was the correlation. So when other statistics, such as means and standard deviation, frequency, were reported, we used that information to calculate correlation. And variables related to study characteristics included publication type, research method, types of research participants, advertising media, product categories, and types of ads and brands, and two independent coders participated in coding. Intercoder reliability was checked at 4 checkpoints, and this ranged from 86% to 100% agreement. Here are the results. For RQ1A, we looked at what specific media contexts were examined in previous literature. A total of 497 effect sizes investigating the relationships between media context and net memory were retrieved and analyzed. A media context was operationalized and measured in over 50 different ways. Among them, the level of involvement with media content, level of arousal induced by media content, perceived level of entertainment enjoyment, level of attention to media content, presence of humor in media content, media transportation, in other words, consumers' experience of becoming non-volitional and observed and transported in the media content, and the presence of violence in media content were more commonly examined. RQ1B focuses on the relationship between media context and net memory. Overall, the mean correlation between media context and net memory was 0.15, meaning that media context affects ad memory. This result is based on 497 effect sizes with a sample size of 221,532. This finding is noteworthy as it evidences the media context in which an ad is placed matters. Where the percent variance was 5.52%, implying that there is heterogeneity underneath this relationship, and subgroup analysis or moderator analysis are necessary. So, I'd like to bring your attention to the effects of more specific media contexts, as they are more homogeneous than this overall correlation. And we categorize media contexts by the type of media context operationalizations that generated a significant positive, significant negative, and no significant impact on ad memory. Let's look at the significant and positive media context first. There were several media contexts generating positive influence on ad memory, especially when research participants were involved with media and media content, when there was congruency or some commonality between media context and ad, and research participants positively evaluated media context, research participants remember the ad better. We did further subgroup analysis on the media involvement and ad memory relationship, as there were enough cases to analyze. Please note that involvement refers to motivational states toward a goal object, and media involvement is often measured by how much media users were involved with media, how frequently research participants used the media, and how they felt when they were exposed to the media, such as the level of attention, interest, relevance, and importance. A forest plot is presented on your right-hand side. All effect sizes or correlations for the relationship between media involvement and ad memory are plotted in this graph, and the red line in the center represents the correlation being zero, no effect on ad memory. So, effects plotted on the right side of the red line indicate positive correlations, whereas effects plotted on the left side of the red line imply negative correlations. And confidence intervals of its correlation are represented by horizontal lines. If confidence intervals for an effect overlap with the red line, this means the correlation is not significant. And the average correlation is plotted as a diamond at the bottom of the graph. So, as you can see in this forest plot, overall there were more positive correlations than negative ones, and the average effect of media involvement on ad memory was 0.21. Subgroup analysis showed that impact of media involvement was stronger and higher for ad content recall and recognition, but the effect disappeared for the recall and recognition for brand name and product category. A stronger effect was observed in non-experimental studies when children or adults were sampled, and when ads were placed in newspapers rather than magazines or TV. Now let's look at the negative media contexts. Arousal, humor, violence, and suspense, among other media contexts, generated a significant negative impact on ad memory. Like involvement, we did further subgroup analysis on the influence of arousal, humor, and violence. Arousal refers to the intensity of being extremely calm to being extremely excited. Arousal induced by media is often measured by items such as exciting, stimulating, or aroused, or operationalized in terms of low versus high intensity or tension. As you can see in this forest plot, many studies observed negative effects of arousal on net memory. You can see more effects plotted on the left side of the red vertical line. Overall, the effect was very weak with the correlation of negative 0.05, and this is because of the mixed results. The effect was not significant on recall, but the negative effect was stronger for recognition, especially at content recognition, than for brand or product recognition. Published works reported more negative correlations, but unpublished works presented more positive correlations. A negative effect was stronger for ads placed in games than other media platforms, and the effect was negative when electronics, automobiles, clothing, fashion, and pharmaceutical products were used, but arousal enhanced ad memory for personal care products. As for humor, programs were often rated on whether they were humorous, amusing, or funny, or humorous programs were compared to non-humorous programs like documentaries. Similar to arousal, there were many negative effects on ad memory when the ad was placed in the humorous programs in comparison to neutral or low humor content. Overall, the effect was weak with a correlation of negative zero point 0.1, and this negative effect was stronger for recognition, and it was not significant on recall. We found more negative effects with non-college student samples like children and adults, and when electronics and beverages were used. As for violence, previous literature often compared violent programs to neutral, non-violent, or low-violent programs. As you can see in this first plot, except for one case, media content featuring violence resulted in a negative impact on ad memory. Overall, all subgroup analysis implied violence negatively affected advertising memory, and a more negative effect was found in the non-student adult samples and when beverages, food, and electronics were used. Now, there were several media contexts not significantly affecting advertising memory. The perceived level of entertainment enjoyment, level of attention to media content, media transportation, and the level of program interest. And we did further subgroup analysis on the top three. As you can see in this first plot, there were more positive effects than negative ones, but most of them were not significant. Many subgroup analyses revealed a non-significant relationship, but entertaining and enjoyable media content positively impacted content recall. The effect was negative for ads in magazines, but positive for ads in games and TV. The effect was more positive when a fictitious brand was used, but when real brand was used, the effect was not significant. And the effect was positive when product categories such as electronics, retail stores, services, household, or food products were promoted in the ad. Similar to entertaining media content, there were many mixed results in studies looking at attention to media content, and many of them were not significant. Overall, many subgroup analyses revealed no significant relationship between attention to media content and ad memory, but we found that attention to media content negatively affected brand recognition, but positively affected ad content recall and product recall. And it negatively affected ad memory for ads placed in magazines and when clothing, fashion, and beverages were used. As for media transportation, there were more negative correlations, but many of them were not significant, and many subgroup analyses showed no significant relationship between media transportation and ad memory. And media transportation did not significantly affect brand recall or recognition, but it positively affected a content recall and recognition. Negative effects were stronger for fictitious brands than real brands, and when beverages, food, or clothing fashion products were used. So, What do these findings mean? First, in this study, we found that high media involvement, greater media and ad content congruency, and program liking positively impact advertising memory, whereas highly arousing, humorous, violent, and suspenseful content was found to negatively impact ad memory. These findings and the past research findings suggest that measuring mere opportunity to see might not be sufficient to determine media effectiveness. The long-standing tenet of media planning is true. It is important for media professionals to consider media context when making media decisions, as media users' thoughts and feelings do not immediately cease when media content is suddenly interrupted by advertising content. And also, media content may work as a cue for media users to retrieve associated thoughts, memory, or mood from past experiences, as a result, influencing users when they process the ad. Second, the conceptual measurement difference between recognition and recall do not seem to matter, but media context seem to enhance ad message recall and recognition more than the brand. The finding may be troubling for clients and advertising professionals, as it is the memory for advertised brands, not memory for the content itself, that the media placed advertising should be achieving. The implication of this memory discrepancy is that advertisers may need to consider ways to increase brand memory. Of course, the studies looking at media context effects did not explore the impact of advertising repetition. It is possible and likely that increased frequency of exposure to the message is required to increase awareness of the advertised brand. Third, fictitious brands tend to generate a stronger impact on ad memory than real brands. One explanation for the larger effect sizes of fictitious brands over real brands is that media users are more likely to use media context factors as cues to evaluate unfamiliar advertised brands, whereas they are less likely to rely on media context factors to evaluate familiar advertised brands. Our findings suggest that media professionals should consider media contexts, especially when they are launching a new brand or trying to reach new non-user target audiences lacking in brand awareness. This concludes my presentation, and thank you.